Hello, Gamecock fans. I'm Spencer Ball.
And I'm JP Barry. Welcome to Ball Don't Lie, SGTV's premier live sports show.
Yeah, JP and I will be giving you our weekly insight every Friday.
This week on the show, MLB updates, Gamecock baseball, and softball.
And later, our reactions and predictions after day one of March Madness.
Be sure to stick around for head-to-head pick'ems.
And without further ado, welcome to Ball Don't Lie.
Welcome to the Kennedy Greenhouse Studio.
If you are a person in the Carolinas with functioning legs and a football jersey, please report to Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte.
We watched Ice Bryce Young do his thing and lead the Panthers to their second win of the season.
I think Matthew McConaughey and Dabo Swinney are very similar. I feel like maybe one day McConaughey could play Dabo in a movie.
Well, I think there's a lot of people that love seeing Clemson lose.
This is just what football is about, man. Two teams that run the football, play defense.
That guy's Superman sometimes, dude. We've got to pick the Yankees, otherwise I'd be kicked out of my own family.
Yankees.
It's time. Is it time?
I think it's time.
This is Ball Don't Lie.
And Major League Baseball is finally back. In case you missed it or you didn't wake up early enough to see it, the Cubs and Dodgers played in Tokyo to kick off the 2025 campaign with 2 games in the Tokyo series.
JP, I think first and foremost we should just talk about how awesome this was for baseball and growing the game globally. JP, 25 million Japanese viewers, that's over 1/5 of the entire country tuned in to game 1 of this. I mean, the atmosphere was awesome. I wish the broadcast did it a little more justice and played some of the nat sounds up because, you know, you hear some of the actual action from inside the dome and you're like, man, it was way louder in person, but it was kind of toned down. But really, I think it was an awesome way to kick off the season. And it really showcases just how much Japan does for today's baseball, especially with the stars on display on these 2 teams.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, at least in terms of pitching. You had Shota Imanaga and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and then Roki Sasaki and Justin Steele, headlining both games, and that's a level of talent that, especially getting to put in front of millions of people in a new market, that's quite impressive.
It sure is, and getting more into the baseball details, the Dodgers did take 2 games against my Cubs. It wasn't, waking up at 6 o'clock and watching your favorite baseball team kind of just put up disappointing performances. Wasn't great, but some highlights for the Cubs. I think Shota Imanaga was fantastic. He did have his career high in walks, but going back and rewatching the game, all 4 of them came in full counts. And the Dodgers last year, JP, had the second lowest chase rate in the entire league. You could just tell that they had very disciplined at-bats. Will Smith had 5 walks across 2 games. And, I mean, they just grind out ABs. And there's a reason this team is projected the highest win total and projected to repeat here early on in the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches for the Dodgers. But Sasaki didn't look great in his debut, and we'll see how he kind of adjusts to that, especially when he faces some of those lineups in the NL West and the NL East that are sure to give him some trouble. But speaking of those teams, before we get a little too far into the season, we figured we'd give you our predictions for this MLB season, starting with our division winners.
Yeah, we'll take a look here at the Atlantic League first, the AL East. JP and I are both rocking with the Red Sox here. I think they had a fantastic offseason.
They did the most, and unlike some of the other teams, they just, they actually brought in talent instead of just losing it and doing nothing. The American League had a very odd offseason. But the Red Sox, they come away with big winners.
The Orioles here, but they didn't do anything really, and in fact, I think they probably lost more than they gained. You lose Santander to division rival and Corbin Burns, and really you don't really fill the hole, and that stings for O's fans who finally saw signs of life. Moving on to the Central, JP, you're going with the Tigers, a shocker of last season.
Yeah, the gritty Tigs. I'm a big fan. Their pitching is just unbelievable. They have the best pitcher in the American League, Tariq Skubal, who won the Triple Crown in the AL Cy Young last year, and their lineup, showed some life later in the season into the playoffs, and then they added Gleyber Torres to that lineup. I really love Torres. I think he plays well in that ballpark. He's a guy who can kind of go to all sides of the field, and I think he's going to do well with the pretty big outfield in Comerica.
And they needed a second baseman.
And they needed a second baseman bad. And so putting him in there, plus he gives a veteran presence to a lineup full of young guys. And their pitching is really good, and I think it'll be enough to kind of, take hold of not a weak AL Central, but an AL Central where everybody's so similar.
I think it's a compact division, where all the teams are right around, we could see this division come down to like 5 games difference between 1 and 4 here in the AL Central. I'm going to go with the Guardians. They were last year's champions. Their rotation is really good. They've got a really fantastic bullpen, probably the best bullpen season ever last year. I don't think they have to hit those same heights to win the division, but I think if they're still probably the best bullpen. So I think, if you're in a close game and it gets to the 6th inning and the Guardians are leading, kind of good luck. It's a good way to win games. I think we could see Travis Bazzana maybe debut this year. If not, some of the other Guardians' young prospects. Tristan McKenzie's coming back. I think they'll win the division in a very close margin, and a lot of those teams are going to be right in the mix. It's a tough division to call.
And speaking of young prospects, Jack Castellone with the Kansas City Royals, the Royals team. Yeah. I was thinking of. I've been watching too many mafia shows lately.
You know what? You're pretty close. You're pretty close. But no, he mashes.
That Royals team, and then the Twins, and so we'll see what happens there. But now we move out west to the American League West with maybe the worst division in all of baseball. I think that the winner of this is only going to be a couple games over 500. I have the Mariners. I'm just going with they have the best starting rotation in baseball. Even their 5 guys probably going to have like a 3.5 ERA.
Yeah.
Their bullpen is very good. And their lineup they just have to score like 2 or 3 runs, and they'll win more ball games than they don't.
Yeah, the Mariners are in a similar boat as the Orioles, where you're just head scratching as to why they didn't try and do more in the offseason. Because if you added another bat to this lineup, then you could start pinning in the Mariners winning this division. I don't think you can. I think it's going to be a close race between them, the Astros, and the Rangers. And I'm going with the 23 World Series champs, Texas Rangers, to get it done. I think they bounce back from last year. You've got DeGrom coming back, and if he's healthy, he could return to the best pitcher in baseball. And not sure he does that, but I think if he's just good and this lineup kind of gets back to normal, they'll have a really good year. Moving over to the National League, let's start with the East, JP. We're both going with your Atlanta Braves to win this one, and they won 89 games last year with just the plethora of injuries that hit them. It was crazy.
For the vast majority of the season, they were without Ronald Acuna Jr., Spencer Strider, Ozzie Albies, and Austin Riley. Michael Harris dealt with some injuries as well. Sean Murphy missed a couple months and then was never the same with his oblique injury. They had all that, and they won 89 games and made the playoffs, and were the second wild card. So even before they added the third wild card, they would have made the playoffs. So, they're a team that they didn't, we'll get to them more in depth, but they didn't have a crazy offseason, but their offseason was more just like, okay, let's get everybody back.
They shored up some holes.
Yeah, they shored up some holes. They made some nice deals that could pay off if they overperform. But it's mostly just about just to get healthy. And in a National League East where really kind of everybody else got worse, the Mets made a big signing with Juan Soto and a couple other guys, but they lost some pitching. The rotation looks horrible. Clay Holmes is their opening day starter.
He's looked really good in spring training, but again, that's just probably not a great place to be.
No. And the Phillies lost a lot, and they're getting a lot older. So we'll see. But now we move on to the Central, where we both have the Cubs. And I think this is going to be kind of a division a lot like the AL Central, where there's the Brewers and the Cubs
and the Reds
that are all going to be kind of similar. But I would love to pick the Pirates or something like that as a trendy kind of pick, but they didn't do anything.
No, I think the Pirates, you've got Paul Skeens, and that's awesome. You've got some good prospects coming up. But really, I think this lineup's bad. The Cardinals didn't do anything. They didn't trade away any of their veterans.
No, they're
going to be no sense.
They're going to be the most hateful, 77 win
But the
team
Cubs,
ever.
2 losses to the Dodgers in Tokyo. You don't hate it so bad. You just got to get right to start the season. They've got a really tough April, so you got to try and make the most of it. You start out on the road against Arizona, a really good team who we both have as wild card selections. But I think the Cubs will bounce back. You just got to get a step from your young guys, and hopefully they make a move before the deadline to add another pitcher to this rotation. Moving on to the NL West, we both have the Dodgers. It's the best team in baseball. I don't think it's really close.
And especially over a 162 game season, their talent is going to win them so many games that no matter what the other teams do, because I like a lot of the teams in the West, I like them a lot. It's just not going to be enough. They're going to literally spawn with like 80.
It's the best baseball team we've seen in quite a while.
They're going to spawn with like 80 wins, and then they just have to win like 20 to 30 on top of that to, pretty much seal the division. And before we head to the awards season, let's take a look at who we have as wild card teams. Starting with Spencer.
In the American League.
Yeah, the Atlantic
Can
League.
I call it the Atlantic League?
Yeah, again.
Well, what are you going to do? The AL wild cards have got the Yankees, the Orioles, and the Astros. I think the AL East is going to be a really close division. But I've got the Red Sox. They have enough capital, I think, to maybe make a move for Sandy Alcantara at the deadline. And that would make their rotation just disgusting. But I think the Yankees and Orioles have really good seasons. And then the Astros just know how to win. And that stinks.
They're the cockroaches. They will survive everything.
And they got Cam Smith from the Cubs in the Kyle Tucker trade, who seems to be, he's mashing the ball. And they're going to try and start him opening day in right field, which would be really interesting.
And they're starting Jose Altuve in left field, which I don't know what they're doing.
They're getting their best players in the field. I respect it. But he does look horrible.
Yeah. And, my third wild card, I have the Toronto Blue Jays. I think it's an all AL East wild cards. Because the Blue Jays roster, you look at it, and it's actually really kind of good. You got Bichette, and you got Vlad Guerrero Jr. in his final year. I think that the Blue Jays are going to kind of go all in to try and win something with him before he hits free agency.
Their GM actually just said they want to re-sign him. So you got to think they're going to try to win if they can.
And they're a team I think could make a move for Sandy Alcantara, and you add him to a rotation that already has Kevin Gausman, and they signed Max Scherzer in the offseason. If Scherzer can just give them a little bit. I like this team a lot, especially in a weak American League. And for the Yankees, it's just like, can they stay healthy? I think if they do that at least a little bit.
They're off to a bad start.
They're off to a horrible start.
Garrett Cole.
They still have a really good lineup, and their bullpen is outrageous. So I like them. Now we'll move on to the National League, where we both have the Arizona Diamondbacks. Spencer, this is a team that, frankly, between them, the Giants, and the Padres, if you gave me the field versus the Dodgers, I might take the field just because the Dodgers have a propensity to get injured so much, because the Diamondbacks have one of the best rotations in baseball with Merrill Kelly,
Corbin Burns,
Zach Gallen, Brandon Pfaadt. Jordan Montgomery is their fifth starter.
Just a guy that can eat innings.
And, their lineup is very good. They lost Chuck Peterson, but they still have, they lost Christian Walker, but Ketel Marte, and they have a lot of prospects coming up. Corbin Carroll and Jake McCarthy are very good as well. I love this Diamondbacks team. And then I have a National League East kind of showcase with the Phillies and the Mets. I said they got worse, but comparative to everybody else, they're still very good. I think the Mets lineup is too good for their pitching to fail them, but I think it'll be close.
I think their pitching will end up being the Achilles heel. I think this team will make a move before the next season to really get over the hump here. But I'm going to go with the Brewers. Kind of similar to the Astros, what you said. They just survive everything. They lost Corbin Burns, won 93 games last year. It's not a good idea to bet against them. I was, a real head scratcher between them and the Cubs to win the Central. I think they get enough to get a wild card spot, and they have really good prospects as well. That's going to do it for our division winners. Now let's move on to see who we have slotted in to win some regular season awards. Starting off with the American League MVP. You went with Aaron Judge. I went with Bobby Witt. I think they were the top two last time.
Bobby Witt would have won MVP in like any other year. And that's the unfortunate reality of it. But now in the National League, I have Juan Soto, you have Shohei Ohtani. I think that there's just going to be kind of a voter fatigue level at play, and then Soto's going to get kind of that Mets bump.
I could see it. I just think if Ohtani pitches this year at all, he's a good pitcher.
I don't know
he's
if
the
they'll
best
be able to
hitter in
deny it.
baseball, and I think he's pretty easily the best player in baseball. Probably, if he wins a third MVP, we could start some fun conversations with Shohei. Moving on to the Cy Young, we both have Garrett Crochet in the American League. Strikeout monster.
There's just not a lot of options. Screwball won last year. He'll be there. The Mariners have like 3 Cy Young candidates. But other than that, Garrett Cole out for the season. There's just nobody there. And then for the National League, I have Corbin Burns. I think he's going to adjust really well with Arizona's pitching help. The Orioles' pitching coaching is terrible, and the Diamondbacks are really good. I think he returns to his Brewers form, and he headlines that rotation. And then you have Paul Skeens.
We saw what he did in 130 innings.
Yeah.
He was an all-star. He won Rookie of the Year. You get him out there for 180, 200 innings, and he learned 2 new pitches. This guy is the only reason you're tuning in to the Padres. The Pirates. Why did I say that?
Because you were thinking of the other Rookie of the Year favorite, Jackson Merrill. But now we move on to Rookie of the Year, where in the American League, I have Jason Dominguez. The Yankees, it feels like he's been their #1 prospect forever, but he's finally playing at the Major League level, and he can rake. He's kind of dealing with a little bit in the field, but that happens to everybody.
Interested to see him. I have Roman Anthony from the Red Sox. I think he's going to get a call up. an incredible prospect. He's mashing balls in spring training. Hopefully, he'll get to play fairly soon, but he's just super exciting to watch and a good outfield defender. In the National League, you have Dylan Cruz, speaking of a great defender. I mean, he's awesome to watch, lightning fast and gets on base. I have Matt Shaw for the Cubs just because he's already starting opening day. He's made some good plays in the field, and I think the bat will come around. Yeah,
I mean, the National League, there's just so much young talent. You can't go wrong with many options compared to the American League. And to round out the MLB coverage, the Atlanta Braves, they've made some significant strides to improve their roster, and it's mostly just been they're getting healthy. But in terms of personnel, some offseason moves, some tough losses in terms of franchise icons. Max Fried, A.J. Minter, Charlie Morton, all members of that World Series winning team, gone, along with Tyler Matzik. And then they lost some bats as well with Ramon Laureano, who was really quite good for the Braves last year, a 130 OPS plus on the team, filling in for the injured Ronald Acuna. And then Whit Merrifield, who kind of anchored things when Ozzie Albies got hurt. But they brought in some interesting talent. Jurickson Profar was the big money move here, Spencer.
Yeah, he was awesome last year for the Padres. There's the Padres. He was great for them last year. He's a really good defender, kind of an on-base machine, and hit for power better than he did most of his career last year. So could be a really interesting move, but he also plays a lot of games, which I think, the Braves looked at what they did bad last year. It was like, well, everyone was hurt, and then we had to sub in some guys who weren't great, like Jared Kelenic. And Ramon Laureano, although he was quite good, I think Jurickson Profar is definitely an upgrade.
Yeah, and with the Braves' kind of elevation in that short portion left field, his swing is going to be really good there. Then they got a couple utility and depth guys. Nick Allen, who can play pretty much any position on the field. Brian De La Cruz, who always hit the Braves hard when he was on the Marlins, and I guess they got kind of sick of it. Catching depth with James McCann. I think maybe they kind of thought it was Brian McCann.
If he turns into it, that'd be pretty sweet.
But then an interesting signing yesterday when they picked up Alex Verdugo, former starting outfielder for the Yankees, but they immediately optioned him to Gwinnett. We'll see what kind of is happening there. Maybe they'll trade Jared Kelenic for more pitching. But then, the biggest additions are just going to be Ronald Acuna Jr. and Spencer Strider coming back. Strider pitched in spring training earlier this week. Acuna's eyeing kind of an early May return. So those guys coming back, that's just that turns the Braves into an absolute juggernaut. But that wasn't the only addition the Braves made recently. Spencer, a certain somebody is making his return to Atlanta.
Yep, Craig Kimball's back, and I would say a Braves legend, man. He was dominant when he was in Atlanta. 4 All-Star appearances in his stint in the early 2010s. Again, traded for a pick that became Austin Riley. You really can't be upset with that at all. He's been kind of a journeyman as of late, but, an all-time great closer. Comes back to Atlanta, and that's just awesome to see, man.
Yeah, and for a team that, they lost a lot of their bullpen. Joe Jimenez is out for the year as well. They need somebody to step up, and who better to go to than a guy who can still, throw the heater and get strikeouts. He had a great season with the Phillies. He made the All-Star team in 2023, but tailed off towards the end of the season and then was disastrous last year for the Orioles. He's trying to come home, revitalize his career. I'm so excited for this. And the first time Welcome to the Jungle rings out at Truist Park, that's going to be one of the all-time moments in recent Braves history, Spencer.
And it's always great when you get a franchise legend back. I'm still hoping the Cubs sign Anthony Rizzo. He doesn't have a home right now, and I'm just like, hey, the team could always use a veteran leader. Your captain from the World Series, bring him home. What do you take a vet minimum to move back to Chicago? Be awesome. Still on the diamond, the Gamecocks have picked up some more wins since we left for spring break.
Not that many, though.
Not that many, but they've looked good. Against Oklahoma, you got to think they're kicking themselves for not winning that Sunday game and taking the series. Really unfortunate.
They had it. And then even on Friday, only a 3-run loss. That's the thing. This team is really good at almost winning. And it's just going to be about getting them over the hump. And there's not going to be any shortage of opportunities in the SEC, especially with this weekend.
This weekend is a tough one. They go on the road to number 3 Arkansas in Fayetteville. It's a very tough place to play against a very good SEC squad. And when you talk about Arkansas baseball, they're just very consistently at the top of the rankings.
That's the top of everything. They haven't been able to get it done in the postseason, but you cannot deny what they have been able to do. And really, it's going to be about the pitching for South Carolina. Their starting pitching is outstanding, a 3.45 staff ERA with 250 strikeouts on the season. How can they contain this Hog lineup on the road? And can they keep it in the game for maybe an Ethan Petrie or a Stone to really kind of get one big hit that can put South Carolina over the hump? Because this game will be low scoring if South Carolina can get it to the game they want it to be. You're not going to need to score like 8 runs to win.
Yeah, and I mean, against Arkansas, it's just really tough. They've got a plethora of bats led by the Alloy brothers. I mean, MLB prospects written all over them. They're both hitting over 400, a combined 17 homers and 63 RBIs. It's really tough. I mean, this is a great team. I think if you go into Fayetteville, you got to at least take one. Don't want to get swept, but I mean, let's put your best foot forward. Let's say, you know what?
This is South Carolina baseball, man.
Yeah, let's get back.
Yeah, I mean, we're not too far removed from times when South Carolina would go into these series and they wouldn't just win; they'd be dominant. And frankly, there's just no reason why they shouldn't be able to do that. I mean, this is a program that has more kind of inherent advantages than almost anybody in America. And I think that this team has it in them. They just gotta find it themselves, and no better time to do that than on the road in Fayetteville against a top 3 team.
And they're also working out some lineup changes. You know, you got to get right. It's the start of the SEC season. But again, you want to win a series sooner rather than later. Our last segment on the Diamond, Gamecock softball, they did go on a 5-game losing streak as soon as we left campus. It was our fault.
We're back, so.
But we should mention that 3 of those games were one-run losses to Oklahoma, all 3 of them just by 1.
Yeah, I mean, that was brutal. I watched each game.
And they played great, man.
Yeah,
they really
played
did.
really good. Then a midweek loss to a very good Coastal team, who I believe had a record on par, if not better than the Gamecocks. And then they dropped a game against Georgia that was very close.
But they came back and won the series. They won the last 2 to get the series dub at home. And that's just, it's really great to see, you know, you deal with a little adversity in the Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, you come back, you get your 2 wins, you win the series. And I think it's been a positive start to SEC play despite the series loss to Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, you know, what they did against Oklahoma is exactly like I think what I wanted to see. Even though they didn't get any wins, they looked like they belonged, and that's what was important. And now, you know, a weekend tilt against number 12 Texas Tech. This one should be very fun, Spencer.
Should be really good. I mean, the Gamecocks come in number 11. Texas Tech comes in number 12. So 2 teams right, you know, very comparable in skill. It should be a really fun series. Me and JP are actually broadcasting the Sunday game at noon. Check it out on SGTV. It should be a really fun one. We're going to, you know, really get into some notes here over the weekend. But I feel like we're familiar with the team, and I think they've got it in them to take a series, you know, keep the positive momentum going, and man, this is a really, really fun team.
Absolutely, but don't go anywhere. We've got some college basketball coverage coming up after this quick break.
And March Madness is officially here. Here's everything you missed from the first day of the tournament. Hopefully you didn't miss it. I mean, it's March Madness. If you're not watching basketball, what are you doing? We had a couple upsets, including our very own team in the upstate. Clemson fell to McNeese State. The Bayou Bandits really showed up, and I think both of us had Clemson making a decent run in the tournament, and they fell flat on their face, especially in that first half.
I mean, 13 first half points. They turned it on. They scored 30 points over the last 6 minutes of the game, Spencer. Unfortunately, they had already been down by nearly 20. And so it was just a tough end to it. What was a really great season for them. A lot of guys leaving. It's going to be a much different cast of characters in Clemson next year. And, you know, so it'll be interesting to see how Brad Brownell kind of navigates that. His name was up for a couple jobs, but I think there's going to be a big extension to keep him in Clemson.
Well,
that's kind of the theme.
For a second, before DeVries got hired at Indiana, you know, a lot of people were saying, well, Brownell's an Indiana guy, you know, born and raised.
Played at DePaul.
Thought he was going back. No.
But, you know, that's kind of the theme of this tournament. Lots of coaching turmoil. We'll get to that. But if we start off the day with a seed line upset where Creighton just really kind of dominated from the get-go, and they just never stopped hitting shots. Louisville falls.
Felt like a bigger gap than 14, too.
Yeah,
I mean, they were hitting everything.
Every time Louisville would get kind of close, a barrage of threes would happen.
Neal and Ashworth couldn't miss.
No, he couldn't. Then, you know, John Calipari gets the best of Bill Self as Kansas goes from preseason number 1 to a first-round exit against the 10th-seeded Razorbacks. Jonas Adu had an outstanding game for the Hogs, didn't he?
He really did, and, you know, Kansas, started playing zone towards the end of the game. Arkansas really broke their brains for a while, but they stayed persistent on the defensive end and finally were able to figure out the zone a little bit. Some big shots from John L. Davis and Boogie Fland coming back. Played really good defense, something, we maybe weren't sure we'd see from him. But they just got the better of Kansas, and I think Calipari showed why he's a really good coach still, man.
No, yeah. I mean, this was one of the best battles of coaching pedigrees we've ever seen. We'll get that, especially in the second round with Calipari versus Patino. I mean, it's going to look like a scene out of The Godfather there on the sidelines. I'm excited. But,
they're going to hug, it's...
And
Fredo.
Then we had Drake, the Bulldogs, with Bennett Sturts and all those guys, the D2 kind of Cinderella story, taking down Mizzou, a team that was really kind of fading fast entering the tournament.
Speaking of fading, that Bennett Sturts one-legged LaMelo three, I said, whew. I mean, the Bulldogs are hot, though. Missouri did not show up super ready, but... we're talking about great coaches. Ben McCollum, what he's been able to do in his first year with a cast of D2 players.
Yeah, apparently he's headed in Iowa. So
there you go. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. He's really had an outstanding year. But let's get into some of the close games. A matchup everybody was talking about. UC San Diego and Michigan, and the Tritons fell flat on their face in the last possession, man. It was a really, really gritty game. They played, what a comeback in the start of the second half. I mean, they were down over 15, I think, at the half. Came back and just played it close the rest of the way.
Took their
Vlad
first
Golden
lead.
Was excellent.
Yeah, and Trey Donaldson hits what would become the game winner as UC San Diego took a 65-63 lead with just, I believe, 40 seconds to go. It was their first lead of the game, and Donaldson just comes down and hits a deep three. I mean, that was just demoralizing. And then, they had a chance down 3 to tie it. They just couldn't get a good shot off. And
would have loved the time out there.
Yeah,
would have
loved it. But for a team making their first ever March Madness appearance, couldn't ask for a better season from the Tritons, and we'll be sure to see them again in the coming years.
And we'll see them in the women's tournament.
Exactly, yeah. And then UNC Wilmington, it was a lot closer than this final score indicates. Against Texas Tech, they were there pretty much the entire game. They didn't let the Red Raiders breathe for even a second until towards the end of the game. They started hitting some free throws, and it kind of got them a cushion, but...
And a team no one was talking about before.
No, yeah.
I mean, I don't think...
It seemed like everyone had Texas Tech, at least going to the Sweet 16. A lot of people in the Final Four. And the Seahawks from the CAA...
showed up to play, man.
They did. Big shout-out to them. Very fun season they had. And then here are today's games to finish out the round of 64. Hopefully there's a little bit more madness going on here. Spencer, with these matchups... What are some of the games that really kind of stick out to you? We're not going to talk about all of them, as you see with this wall of text.
It's a big blob, but I mean, hey.
It was the only way to properly portray it all.
And it's what March Madness is all about. Some games I'm really interested in. I mean, this is very common. Memphis, Colorado State, I think is going to be a good one. Again, no Tyrese Hunter from Memphis, so it should be very interesting to see if they're still able to take down. Colorado State has been really hot as of late. Iowa State, Lipscomb might be the most interesting 14-3 matchup because Iowa State without Keyshawn Gilbert. It's going to be interesting to see, kind of what to make of that. I still think the Cyclones will come out on top, but keep your eye on it. Moving on, St. Mary's Vanderbilt, I think will be very good. Ole Miss UNC could be a good game. Everyone's saying the Tar Heels don't deserve to be there. They decided to drop 90 on San Diego State for the first time in like 20-something years or something. I mean, the Aztecs known for their defense. Didn't show it in that one. JP, I think Marquette, New Mexico's one to keep your eye on. Everyone's high on the Zips against Arizona. Again, it's just a great slate of games. March is back, baby.
It's so back. I'm very excited for today. I like what you said about St. Mary's Vanderbilt. That's a good clash of styles. But, a game that I think might be flying under the radar a little bit, Maryland Grand Canyon. Kevin Willard, Maryland's AD is already leaving for the Southern Methodist job. And Kevin Willard is pretty much openly going like, yeah, I'm talking to Villanova. Yeah, I'm probably, it seems like Villanova and Kevin Willard are kind of having a secret rendezvous during the tournament. And the last time Willard did this, Seton Hall got, nuked by TCU. They lost by, I believe, almost 30 when Kevin Willard left the Pirates to take the Maryland job. And now he's leaving to take Villanova. Well, we'll see. But it seems like, Willard is airing these grievances publicly where Maryland's not investing money that you think they should into basketball. What do you mean Maryland basketball can't get money for hotel stays? What are you giving it to their football team who almost loses to Towson every year?
Yeah, the 6-6 Maryland football.
I mean, what a gross mismanagement of resources by Maryland.
Especially when you have a great coach like Kevin Willard.
And it's hanging this awful cloud over what's been an outstanding season for the Terrapins. Maybe their best team since their 2002 national champion winners, the Crab Five. I mean,
awesome stuff.
I love this team, but how can you focus on the task at hand with all this outside noise?
And how are you going to guard Tyon Grant Foster?
Yeah,
that's the real question.
Grand Canyon, the Liberty of the West, as they're known. And so that's a game that I think is exciting. And then the game adjacent to the Memphis, Colorado State. It's been a disastrous go for the Mountain West Conference for the last several years. Memphis, a betting underdog to the Rams, who have won 10 straight coming into this one. I'm excited.
And Nick Clifford, man, he's got NBA written all over him.
Yeah,
He's going to be a guy to watch. I think we should talk really quick. Me and JP were speaking yesterday about how we think all this coaching and AD and transfer portal stuff, it should not be able to happen until after the tournament is done. There's no rush. I mean, it's not like, I don't know. I just don't like it. I think, again, it brings a bad cloud over your team. Your team is in March Madness. You're talking about getting another job. I mean, it should be wait till the tournament's done. Even if it's the Monday after, like NFL has the Black Monday, every coach gets fired right after the season ends. It's whatever it is, I think you should be able to give it a little more time because it does take away from the tournament in some regards. Like Will Wade, pretty much going to NC State, but he told his team that. His team's like, hey, we're transferring too. Let's ride out one last time.
I think transparency is the way to go. I mean, even Kevin Willard in his vague Italian northeastern way, he's like, yeah, so on Christmas Day back in the days, and I'm like, okay, Kevin. But, it's being transparent with it, I think, is the best way to go.
It is, but it's not a great system, but we are going to move on because here are JP and I's predictions for the rest of the tournament after day one. I mean, we've
it's the best time of the year.
We've stewed our mind here.
I know. I took a long time to kind of get mine together. We'll start with the Cinderellas. I have the Xavier Musketeers, the Big East, having a great year so far. Spencer, I think they do it even better, but you have the North Carolina Tar Heels.
2 11 seeds, and really, this UNC team, I think the reason they got in is the eye test, because I think if you watch UNC and you watch Texas, one of those teams are clearly much better than the other. Texas, I mean, Xavier showed you why. They're horrible. Their coach is getting canned. But UNC looked really good against San Diego State. They're playing their best basketball of the year. I think they've got a good matchup against Ole Miss, who I don't really care for. I don't think they're great. And then if Iowa State wins, without Keyshawn Gilbert, I think that's a good matchup for UNC, so I don't think they have a hard path to the Sweet 16 at all. I could just see it happening. They've got a lot of motivation right now because of all the doubt. There's nothing better than proving people wrong. Nothing easy. It's so easy to fire up your team when everyone's like, well, you shouldn't be here. Show them why.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel about Sean Miller and the Musketeers. A lot of people were saying they shouldn't have got in, and they showed it in that second half against Texas. Zach Fremantle, trying to go out on his last ride for the Musketeers. And they got a favorable matchup with an Illinois team that's been, kind of up and down all year, Jekyll and Hyde. And then if they win, they face a Kentucky team that's dealing with injuries. And, they don't play defense. So we'll move on to the sleepers, where I have a West Coast Conference special with the St. Mary's Gales. I think they got a very favorable matchup against Vanderbilt. And then they're a stylistic nightmare for Alabama in the second round. I think they could definitely get it to the Sweet 16.
Put Nate Oates in a chokehold.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, that defense for the Gales is so special. And then I think it's finally the year for the Zags.
Wow.
They're maybe the most underseeded team ever. Number 8 in KenPom, and they get an 8 seed. They blew out Georgia yesterday. And they play Houston tomorrow in what should be an excellent game. I think the Zags have a run in them.
That would be awesome, man. I'm going with the Oregon Ducks. It's Dana Altman March. It's kind of his thing. He's made it to the Sweet 16 more times than you can count in the past decade. I think they've got a good matchup against Liberty. They play Liberty, live and die by the 3, but Oregon, they've got some really lanky defenders who are quick. They're going to have do a really good job of closing out. They played Michigan State close in the Big Ten tournament, and again, I just think they have a pretty easy path to the Sweet 16. I mean, you line up against potentially Arizona.
An old Pac-12 rivalry.
I don't mind that matchup at all for the Ducks, and again, Nate Biddle's a guy that can stretch the floor, gets it done on the low block. I like the Ducks, and I also have Xavier as my sleeper. I was debating, are they sleeper, Cinderella? I'm going sleeper just because I think they match up well against Kentucky. Illinois might be a little tough. Again, you've said they've been hit or miss all year. If Xavier can get it done on the inside, Fremantle has a great chance against Kentucky, who's without Jackson Robinson the rest of the year. It's going to be really tough for them to stop him, and I think I think they could get to the Sweet 16, but, time will tell.
Yeah, now we'll move on to our final 4 picks. Starting with mine, I have Michigan State versus St. John's, Izzo versus Pitino, and then Duke versus Gonzaga. John Shire against Mark Few. John Shire, really kind of the young man or amongst those coaches. But, this is just what the sport's about. I think all these teams are fantastic. There's definitely teams in each region that could beat these squads, but I think when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and all these teams have that March toughness.
I like that one, man. I got 3 1 seeds here in my Final Four, Florida, Duke, and Houston. But the 1 seed that falls, it's the Auburn Tigers. They've been looking worse for wear as of late. Sparty, looking good as ever.
Yeah.
Let's say they take on Bryant tonight. You want to see them get a win there, or I do. But again, I think they're really good. They get it done from everywhere and from everyone. They play tough defense. Tom Izzo is a fantastic coach. I think he should be a candidate for Coach of the Year. He's got 1 All Big Ten third team member. That's the highest rated player on this team, and they're a 2 seed. Could have, if it wasn't such a dominant year for everyone else, could have been a 1 seed on, every other year. This is a stacked team, man. I really like them. I like them so much. I'm picking them in the title game over Duke. There's just something about it, and I was thinking about it. I made 3 brackets. I had Duke, Florida, and Michigan State as winners in each of them. So I was like, which one, what do I believe in? And March is all about your heart. You gotta pick what feels right, and nothing feels better than Sparty on top in the biggest of 2025. Give me Izzo returning to the mountain.
It would be very poetic for him to finally get over the hump and win that elusive national title.
25 years.
In 25 years against a team that I don't think he's ever beat in the tournament. It was always Coach K getting in the way, but now it's his protege Shire, and I have the apprentice continuing. Kind of the torment of
Please
Izzo.
Don't let it happen.
I think John Shire and Duke, they're just too good. But hey, we comply with Title IX here on Ball Don't Lie.
That's right,
The women's tournament starts today. Here are our thoughts on that bracket as well, going through our predictions. It's pretty much a stacked field, Spencer. I'm very excited. My Cinderella.
Talk to me.
It was a team that South Carolina faces the 16 seed a year or 2 ago. It's the Norfolk State Spartans. This team
Up to a 13 seed, am I right, JP?
Up to a 13 seed.
Talk to me,
They
Goose.
are 30-4 on the year, Spencer. I love this squad. They have 7 players that average a steal or more per game, one of the best defenses in all of women's basketball, and they challenged themselves in the out-of-conference, went on the road to Auburn, went on the road to Mizzou, and got the wins in those tough SEC environments. And I think they got a really nice matchup in the first round. I think their defense can cause problems for just about anyone.
I'm going with the George Mason Patriots. I don't know if you've heard of the story of this, but their coach, Vanessa Blair Lewis, her dad is in hospice. They used to coach together. It's a really sweet story, but they had never made the NCAA tournament. They go out, they win the A-10 for their first ever appearance. This team is really, they're efficient. They get scoring from a multitude of players. They've got 3 averaging over at least 10 a game, 1 over 15. They're a really good team, and one thing I really like about them is early in the year, a close loss to a 4-seeded Maryland team. That's early in the year. This team's gone on a tear as of late, and I think it just speaks to how good of a coach Blair Lewis is, because just 5 years ago when she inherited the job, they were 3-19, 0-14 in the A-10. Talk about a turnaround and doing it rather quickly. I think this team has a real shot. They've got a good matchup, and it would make for a Sweet 16 appearance against a bid for the Sweet 16 against LSU in the round of 32. How about just good versus evil?
That would be very awesome as we move now to the sleepers. I got 2 programs that are, kind of dormant sleeping giants. I got the Lady Vols, who are all the way back this year, making the tournament for the first time in a bit.
Under a new head coach?
Under a new head coach. They score almost 90 points a game, Spencer. This is a high-octane offense, and when you have that in March, you can beat anybody. I'm a big fan of this team. They get it from everybody. And then Louisville's kind of a different story. They're not as much of an offensive-oriented squad, but they hit you hard on defense, and they get it. There are some of their parts. They don't have any one player that they go to. And these are 2 teams that just, you see them every March on the women's side of things. They just find ways to win. And I think they do so, even from, kind of Louisville's 7 seed, Tennessee's a 5 seed.
Yeah, and my sleepers, 6-seeded West Virginia. They're led by J.J. Quinterly. She is awesome to watch. I mean, just that head-down guard, gets to the rack effectively and finishes through contact often. This West Virginia team, they force a lot of steals. They're very aggressive defensively, and they're really, really fun to watch. I like them to make a run. I could see them getting to the Sweet 16 with relative ease. And I've got 6-seeded Michigan. You're like, what? Michigan. Yeah, I know. I can't believe I'm saying it either, but they've got one of the best freshmen in the country, Silas Swords. Seeing her face off against South Carolina earlier in the year, she was getting hers. It didn't matter from where. Pulling up, a great three-point shooter, and I really do think Michigan can make some noise because when you've got a star you can go to in March, especially with a lower-seeded team, it can do a lot for you.
And I think something that sets the women's tournament apart from almost anything else is the home court factor. You get to see these games on campuses in the first couple of rounds. And I think that's a big factor for some of these Cinderellas, like Michigan. If they win, you set up a Notre Dame-Michigan matchup in South Bend. Wouldn't that just be something? As the Lady Irish take on SF Austin today, and as we move to the Final Four, Spencer, you and I have very similar Final Fours, except for me. I have Notre Dame taking Texas's spot in that region, but UConn, UCLA, South Carolina, I mean, I feel like it's a much deeper year than usual. I mean, I have a 3-seed and a 2-seed, along with 2 1-seeds. Spencer, you have a
2-seed and 3 1s.
Yeah. But, I mean, Texas, South Carolina, UCLA, they were all there together all year. And it's such a special year with the talent, I think, on display.
Yeah, I don't think there's one clear favorite, and I think that's the best part about this tournament. Again, in the title game, I have South Carolina getting their revenge on UCLA, going back-to-back. And I think the main reason, I don't know if South Carolina has, the best team in the country, but I think they have the best coach in the country. And I think that's something I trust in big games more than anything, especially when it's really a flip of a coin. I trust Dawn Staley to lead a team to victory. She's done it before. I think she can very well do it again. And because South Carolina lost by 18 to UCLA very early on in the year, let's not paint it too badly.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah. But I think they have a real shot to, get payback. And I think this team is playing really good basketball as of right now. We saw them get their revenge against Texas recently. I think it should be a great tournament, man.
And I got kind of a biased pick, but for a large swath of this season, nobody looked better and nobody had better wins than the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I mean, you look at your Final Four, they blew out Texas and they blew out UConn at home, in these big games. They have so many wins over the field. They have more wins over the tournament field than anybody in the country. They kind of got worn down towards the end of the season. I think playing so many big games, playing so many minutes, kind of wore on people like Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles and Citron. And they just kind of, they lost to NC State. They lost in the ACC tournament.
Yeah.
They lost on senior day to Florida State. But they've had all this time, rest and recuperation. I think no team in the country is better suited for a one-and-done situation than Notre Dame. They got a favorable draw. I mean, really, they did. I'm a fan of their region. And like you said, it's a one-and-done, in a coin flip game. Give me Hannah Hidalgo.
You've got stars,
and
man.
Olivia Miles. I mean, 2 of the best players in the country in the same backcourt. They have a great supporting cast. I have them taking down UConn in that vaunted rivalry matchup to take home Notre Dame's first national championship since 2019 when Niall Ivey was an assistant for the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, she's a great head coach, but we are going to hone in on one matchup. Last but not least here on Ball Don't Lie, let's see the Gamecock women's basketball, who they take on in the first round. It's Tennessee Tech and the Golden Eagles here at Colonial Life today at 4 p.m. on ESPN against South Carolina, a 1-seed, 30-3, and looking to repeat for Tennessee Tech. They're on a 17-game win streak that dates back all the way to January 9th. I mean, just started 9-5. Now they're 26-5. That's a pretty good stretch there.
Yeah, and for South Carolina, it's all about taking care of business in front of the home crowd, and they did that in the SEC tournament. Much to the chagrin of Texas's head coach. Did you hear what Dawn Staley had?
It is the Southeastern Conference.
Dawn Staley had a really good bit. She was like, "Hey, raise your hand or cheer if you went to the tournament in Greenville," and everybody was like, "Yeah." She's like, Stop doing that because they're trying to get it to move for me and Greenville. So that was fun. And, I'm really interested to see who wins that 8-9 and faces South Carolina in the second round because Utah, a team that they're
great offense.
Yeah, great offense. They're new on the block. But Indiana, a team that they're having a little bit of a down year compared to previous seasons. They're very talented and they're very dangerous. This is a tough 8-9 matchup for the Gamecocks to kind of navigate. And as long as they take care of business against Tennessee Tech, they still got a really good chance.
And I think they got a pretty good draw as well because you ended up getting lucky. You don't have UConn at the bottom of your bracket. You've got Duke, who's not UConn or Notre
NC State.
Dame. Yeah. You know what? I think South Carolina fans will be just fine with that. That's all we've got for you today, and we'll be right back after the break with this week's Pick'ems to wrap up yet another episode of Ball Don't Lie.
And welcome back to Ball Don't Lie Pick'ems. After we both went 6-4 over spring break, I'm currently sitting at 45-30, while Spencer's at 51-24. We're going to roll through these games really quick. This is all today's first round action, starting with the 8-9 Mississippi State. Baylor, who do you got?
Baylor.
Mississippi State, I think Josh Hubbard's too much for him.
Don't really want to watch this one.
No, this one might suck. Then we got Iowa State Lipscomb, a game you were talking about, Spencer.
Give me the Cyclones. I still think they're too much for Lipscomb.
I agree. One of my few deep run picks, still alive after yesterday's tragedy. Memphis, Colorado State.
I go with Colorado State here. Memphis, no Tyrese Hunter. Could be tough. P.J. Haggerty is awesome, though.
P.J. Haggerty's awesome. The Mountain West sucks. Give me the Tigers setting up a nice second round matchup. But now, Ole Miss, North Carolina. Spencer.
Give me the heels. Cinderella. Let's see if the shoe fits.
I agree. Ole Miss sucks and they hired Chris Beard. Screw him. Anyway, Maryland, Grand Canyon.
Crab 5.
Crab 5. Kevin Willard's bald head. Kentucky, Troy.
Kentucky.
Kentucky.
Nice.
Marquette versus New Mexico.
Gonna go with Marquette here.
I agree. New Mexico, the Mountain West. I'm sorry.
We've heard about this Mountain West Conference. Apparently they
suck. Arizona versus Akron.
Gonna go with Arizona here. The Zip's a little too popular for my opinion.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think Caleb Love has enough in the tank.
He's a March legend. You gotta say it.
UConn, Oklahoma.
UConn. Oklahoma's horrible. If Oklahoma wins this, I will be shocked. Give me the Huskies.
Absolutely. And then Michigan State versus Bryant.
Get your sword and spear, baby. Sparty.
Sparty, Hardy. I agree.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Ball Don't Lie, and certainly our fastest pick'ems today. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, and TikTok at SGTV at USC.
To keep up with all of our content, be sure to also visit us online at sgtv@usc.com. For SGTV, I'm JP Barron.
And I'm Spencer Ball from all of us here at SGTV. Have a great weekend, Carolina. Enjoy March.
Forever to thee.
Behind that camera, it's me. Happy March.
Happy March. Enjoy your madness.
It's me, Steve.